So in this workout, I'm going to be doing leg press, close grip bench press, rows, tricep extensions, and face pulls, all for 2 sets each. So the most important thing for a busy individual to know about building a great physique is the trade-off between volume, which is how many exercises and sets you do in each workout, and intensity, which is how hard you train. And so the harder you train, the less volume you need to build muscle. And if you're a busy individual who's trying to maximize your time efficiency in the gym, you basically want to swap volume for more intensity, because the harder you train, the less volume of training you need to build muscle. And so when I first got into training, I followed conventional bodybuilding routines that had me in the gym like 4 to 6 days a week, doing 10 to 20 sets per muscle group, doing like 4 to 5 sets per exercise. What I realized is that as a result of doing so much volume, I was basically going through the motions in my sets. And so I want you to picture going into, let's say, bench press, knowing that you have 5 sets to get through. You're not gonna push those sets very hard because deep down you're like, fuck me, I got 5 sets to get through. I better hold myself back in order to get through those sets. Compare that to going into bench press knowing that you have just 2 sets to do. You're going to approach it with a completely different mindset. You're all of a sudden going to realize, okay, I have literally 2 sets, that's it, to make it count. And the most important thing to understand is that how much time you spend in the gym, how much volume you do, is irrelevant. What counts is how hard you train. And to train hard, you can't do much volume. And so that is the trade-off that you have to take advantage of as a busy person. You want to reduce the volume, but if you're going to succeed with a lower volume approach where you're doing fewer exercises and fewer sets, you have to increase the intensity. The reason why you want to focus on compound exercises as a busy person is because they are the most efficient bang for your buck movements, and they work the most amount of muscle in your body. And so if you try to build your physique through just focusing on a lot of isolation exercises, which are basically single joint movements that work one muscle at a time, examples include calf raises, bicep curls, etc., then you're gonna have to use a lot of isolation exercises to hit your entire physique, whereas just a small handful of compound exercises will work your entire physique. And compound exercises are really the most effective movements for building a great physique, because not only are they time efficient and they work a lot of muscle in your body, but they are the easiest to progressively overload, and you can use the most weight on them, which are basically the most important criteria for what makes a good exercise. So now I'm gonna be getting into 2 sets of close grip bench. And so I'm gonna be going for 6 to 8 reps and then 8 to 10 reps in the second set. And so basically I just got off of a shoulder injury, so I haven't been training upper body for the past like 3 to 4 weeks. And so I'm just starting light, building my way back up. It's important that if you have to take time off the gym or you injure yourself, never start heavy when you get back to the gym. Give your body time to work up to the weights you were using before. If you rush it, you probably just risk re-injuring yourself. And so I'm just gonna take my time, slowly build my way up. And so for this first set, I'm going for literally just 165. I like to, for my training style, use basically a top set followed by a back down set. So I start heavy and then I go light. And so a lot of bodybuilding training has you starting light and then building up to the heaviest weight. The problem with that is that by the time you reach that heaviest set, you're fatigued and you can't perform, right? And that heaviest set's the most important set. And so I like to flip the script and instead, slowly warm up to that heaviest set and then start with that heaviest set while I'm fresh, so I can actually make it count, and then I'll go lighter after that. And the reason for that back down set is that that first set is so heavy, so intense, that you're usually not gonna be able to replicate it for a second set, and that's why you wanna take a little bit of weight off the bar. So I like to warm up to one top set of like 6 to 8 reps, and rest 3 to 5 minutes typically for the compound movements. Take 10 to 20% of the weight off the bar, and then go for a lighter back down set of like 8 to 10 reps. And so I work in a rep range. So let's say I'm doing 165, and in this workout I get 6 reps. In my next workout, I'm gonna try and add a rep and go up to 7. And then the next workout, I'm gonna try and go up to 8, right? And that's basically called the double progression method, where you work in that rep range, and then once you hit the top end of the rep range, you add a little bit of weight, and then you drop to the bottom of the rep range, right? So once I can get 8 reps, for example, with 165, I will have hit the top end of the rep range, and then I'll go up to 170 and then drop down to 6. And that is super important, because that's what most people are missing in their training, is an actual system to progress, right? Most people just go by feel, they treat it intuitively, but you need a progression system in place to ensure that you're adding weight to the bar over time, because if you're not getting stronger, you're not getting bigger. I think that was either 8 or 9 reps. And so when I say you have to train intensely, that's basically what I mean. You want to push it to where you have 0 reps left in reserve, right? You don't actually want to fail, but you want to squeeze out every rep that you can do using good form. So if you're going to use a low volume training approach where you're literally just doing like 2 sets per exercise, you have to make sure that the sets count. You cannot be half-assing the sets, right? Because if you remember that sort of trade-off between volume and intensity, if you're going to reduce the volume, you have to increase the intensity. If you're going to do a lot of volume, then you have to reduce the intensity, right? Like when you're doing just 2 sets, you got to train hard. And that is fundamentally that sort of trade-off that you want to take advantage of as a busy person. Because if you can push 2 sets to the bleeding edge, that is all you need to stimulate a ton of muscle growth. Because at the end of the day, training hard is what counts. The amount of sets you do don't mean shit. If you don't believe me, look around your gym at all the people doing 10 to 20 sets per muscle group, doing bro splits, living in the gym. Most of them never develop great physiques, and that's because they're not training hard enough and they're not seeing that progressive overload over time. So I rested about 3 minutes and took some weight off the bar. So I took about 10% of the weight off. So I dropped down to 150 pounds, and now I'm gonna try and get like 8 to 10 or 10 to 12. So that's basically how it works. You take some weight off and then you try and get a couple more reps. All right, so I got 8 reps, and so I didn't actually add any reps, which happens sometimes, completely normal. As long as those sets are pushed to the bleeding edge to where you have 0 reps left in reserve, you're good. And so with my group coaching clients recently, I had a question like, how do you increase your bench? And first of all, the answer to that question is that first of all, you have to be following a program that's actually conducive to gaining strength, right? Most people are training way too much. They're in the gym way too often. It doesn't give their bodies time to actually grow and recover. And so they're basically in a constant state of overtraining and stagnation. And so the first thing you have to do is follow a low volume, high intensity training approach and a low frequency training approach where you're training just 2 to 3 times a week, having plenty of recovery between workouts, because that's really the key to achieving consistent progress. But then apart from that, once that fundamental, that fundamental's in place in terms of just having a good program, really it comes down to gaining weight. And so a lot of guys are like cutting and not eating enough. They're like, I can't gain strength in my bench press no matter what. If you're natural, it is really difficult to increase your bench press significantly without gaining weight. And so a lot of times you can gain strength on your deadlift, your squat without putting on too much weight, but especially if you're beyond the beginner stage of lifting, lack of strength gains on the bench is almost always due to the fact that most guys just are not eating enough and not actually gaining weight. And so one of the main reasons that you lose strength on your bench press when you're cutting is that your leverages actually change. And so if you lose weight and you get smaller, the bar actually moves through a greater range of motion, right? Because you lose size, and so the bar actually has to move like an extra inch, right? And so the same thing happens when you're bulking. Your body's getting bigger, and mass moves mass, right? And so if you're getting bigger, you're naturally going to increase your strength on the bench press. And so that's one of the most important things. Another thing you can also do to increase your bench if it's really slow for you is you can use micro plates, which are basically fractional plates, 1 pound plates or even half pound plates. You just focus on adding small weight increments each week. That's really effective because a lot of times, adding 5 pounds to a bench press is really difficult. Same thing with overhead press. So going up in smaller increments, we're using fractional weight plates, makes a huge difference. So now I'm going to be getting into 2 sets of cable rows. So I'm going to do 2 sets of 10 to 12 reps with 145. So we got 14 reps there, so a bit beyond the rep range I was shooting for. A quick tip for pretty much every movement is that a lot of people, they neglect the lengthened portion of the movement. So the eccentric at the bottom when you get the stretch, that's actually where you place the most tension on the muscle. And tension is what drives muscle growth, right? And so if you're not getting that stretch, whether it's on rows or chin-ups or bench, you're leaving a lot of gains on the table. And most guys are using too much weight, and more weight than they can handle, and they're sacrificing the range of motion as a result. They'd be better off and they make more gains by actually reducing the weight and doing the exercise through a full range of motion and really getting that stretch at the bottom. If you don't get that stretch, you're leaving a lot of gains on the table. You have to remember that if you're in the gym, like we're here to build muscle, not to just move weight. And to build muscle, you need to take your muscles through a full range of motion, which requires you doing the whole range of the exercise. So you guys might be wondering what the fuck I'm doing in a completely different gym. I ended up getting kicked out of that gym for filming, and so I am now filming at my home gym, just gonna finish up the workout with my isolation exercises. So I'm basically just gonna superset some tricep extensions and some rear delt flies. So supersetting is a great way to shave some time off of your workout. It's basically where you do one set of an exercise immediately followed by another set of an exercise. The key is to make sure that the exercises don't overlap in terms of what muscles are used. And so going from tricep extensions to then doing rear delt flies doesn't use any of the same muscles. And so it's an easy way to shave some time off of your workout without actually affecting your performance. So I'm just gonna go for 2 sets of 10 to 12. With these 20-pound dumbbells on the tricep extensions, and I'm going to follow that up with the rear delt flies. Okay. So the reason why it's possible to build a great physique working out just twice a week is because, quite frankly, most people train way too often and do not give their bodies time to actually recover and grow from the work they do in the gym. And that's why most people who train 4 to 6 days a week are literally lifting the same weights month after month and looking the same month after month. The truth is, muscle is not built in the gym. It's built outside of the gym when you're resting and recovering. And so if you're training on consecutive days, you're not giving your body the rest time that it needs to actually turn the stimulation you create in the gym into muscle growth. And this might sound like common sense, and the reason why it sounds like common sense is because it fucking is. And the fitness industry just overcomplicates things. The truth is that most mainstream bodybuilding routines are crafted by steroid users, and people who take steroids can recover fast and easy from high volumes of training, and they can train very frequently because that's what steroids do. Steroids give you superhuman recovery abilities. When you're not taking steroids, it takes your body much longer to recover from a strenuous weight training session. And so again, the reason why most people are basically in a constant state of stagnation and look the same month after month, because they don't give their bodies time to actually recover and grow from what they do in the gym. And the important thing to understand fundamentally is that how much time you spend in the gym on a weekly basis doesn't really mean shit. What matters is that you're getting stronger over time, right? You know, someone could be training 4 to 6 days a week, but if they're bench pressing 130 pounds right now and all of their lifts are weak, and in a year's time they're still lifting the same amount of weight, I mean, it doesn't matter that they're in the gym 4 to 6 days a week. Like, if they're lifting the same weight, they're not gonna have gotten any bigger, right? And when you train less frequently, it actually becomes much easier to gain consistent strength. And that's why working out twice a week is so effective. So now I'm just gonna get into my last set of tricep extensions and rear delt flies. I'm just gonna basically replicate my performance.